Let's take a second and get to know how the light meter inside your camera works. It might automatically change some settings for you, or it might give you information on your exposure indicator, depending on what shoot mode you're using. This is really going to be useful for you in getting the kind of exposures you want. So let's take a moment, see what it does, and practice with it. The first thing we're going to do is put our camera into center weighted metering mode. This will be different for every camera, so take a peek in your manual and figure out how to change to center weighted metering. We're going to start off with aperture priority mode, or AV. So put your camera into AV mode. What happens here is that the light meter will look at the scene in front of you. You're going to choose the aperture, and the light meter will automatically set your shutter speed to give you a neutral exposure. So let's see how that works. Press halfway down on your shutter release to activate your light meter. And point your camera at something around you. Press halfway down and you'll see it sets the shutter speed. Now move your camera and point it at a brighter part of the scene and a darker part of the scene. And what you should see is that the shutter speed changes when you point at a brighter and darker area. The light meter is constantly taking those readings and trying to give you that neutral exposure. Now, if the light meter shuts off, all you have to do is press halfway down on the shutter release again. You don't have to hold it, just press halfway down to reactivate. So that's how it works in AV mode. You set the aperture, the light meter is going to set your shutter speed. Let's take a look at shutter priority mode, or TV. So change your camera to TV. What you do here is you set the shutter speed and the light meter will set the aperture. So let's do the same thing. Point your camera at something, press halfway down to activate the light meter, point it at a brighter area and a darker area, and watch and see how the aperture changes. The third mode is manual mode, and this one's a bit different, so let's try it out. Change your camera to manual mode, or M, and point your camera at something, and what you'll notice here is that the setting doesn't change. What changes is the point along the exposure indicator. The light meter isn't going to do any work for you. It's just going to tell you whether that photo would be neutrally exposed, overexposed, or underexposed. You're going to have to do the work to get what you want. So let's do the same thing. Let's point it at something in your scene and a brighter area and a darker area, and practice reading that exposure indicator. Now, in manual mode, you can adjust the shutter speed or the aperture and move that indicator to compensate. So try changing those settings and watch how that also moves the indicator. So the light meter is really, really useful for you. It gives you a lot of information, and it can even automatically set your settings for you to get a great exposure. There's one tip that I want to give you. If you see a setting flashing, either the aperture, the shutter speed, or maybe the indicator, that's just telling you that it is so overexposed or so underexposed that you've maxed out that setting. So you're going to have to do some adjusting of your other settings to try and bring it back. But if you see something flashing, that just means we're really far out. Let's change something to get it back. So practice with that. Try it in AV mode, in TV mode, and manual mode. Point at brighter and darker areas and watch how the light meter is making adjustments, because the more you can learn how to read it and understand what's going on and how it's working in your camera, the more you're going to be able to get the exposures you want in your images.